Welcome to Jen's Daily Dish. Today we're going to be making Buttermilk Lemon Apricot Scones. Why? Why not? Is there ever a bad time for scones? I can't think of one. And also, I'm making the scones because they're yummy. Lemon and apricot add-ins. Apron. Before you gather all your ingredients, preheat your oven to 400 degrees. We're going to start by whisking together all of the dry ingredients. Keep your butter super cold at this point and your buttermilk in the refrigerator. We're going to whisk together all of the dry ingredients. We have our flour, we have our baking powder, we have our salt, we have our sugar, our lemon zest, and our apricots. Let's talk about the lemon zest and the apricots. Lemon zest. I actually love this microplane. It's quite old. And I'll have to do a follow-up to my top 7 gadgets that I love in the kitchen, under $30, and I'll have to add this in. The apricots. It calls for a cup of them to be slivered. Well, they look like this when they begin, and they're delicious. And I managed to get them to this type of sliveredness. I think it's going to be just fine if they're a little bit chunky. I'm sure you're wondering, well, how much is that? In a 6-ounce bag, that's about 1 cup of these slivered apricots. 3 cups all-purpose flour, 4 teaspoons baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup sugar, grated zest 1 lemon, 1 cup slivered dried apricots. Whisk together. Take 8 tablespoons of unsalted butter and cut them into little pats like you'll see here. We're going to put that into the mixture that we just whisked, all of those dry, yummy ingredients. And we're going to use my favorite pastry blender. Feel free to use your hands. You want very few lumps remaining, so I might start off with this and then get messy. 8 tablespoons butter. Okay, I've been mixing it a lot with my hands, and I think I've gotten it to a pretty good place where it's fairly well combined. But I have to be honest, with the apricot slivers in there, it's a little hard to tell because you might think that you're grabbing a piece of butter to smush, and it's actually an apricot. I think it's going to turn out delicious anyway, so let's go with it. Now let's whisk together the wet ingredients. I have 3/4 cup of buttermilk, 1 egg, and it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of lemon oil, which surprisingly, I actually had in my pantry. You might in yours too. This was one of those special oils that I've gotten as gifts and was never quite sure what to do with. Well, I found a purpose for it. It's actually quite delicious. It tastes like olive oil with just a hint of lemon at the back end. 1/2 teaspoon lemon oil in with the buttermilk and the egg. Whisk together. Add wet to the dry until it is well moistened. Line a baking sheet with parchment paper or lightly grease it. At this point, you have a big decision to make. Do you want to make drop scones, which is about a 1/4 cup of the mixture, and you just literally plop it down on your baking sheet and into the oven it goes? Or do you want the more classic wedge-shaped scones? I like a challenge, so let's make the wedge-shaped scones, which is why I have my lovely pastry baking mat down here to help me with the process, because we have to get them to a very special diameter, 4 3/4 of an inch. Not 5, not 4 1/2, but 4 3/4 of an inch according to the recipe. But we're gonna do it. Gently flour your work surface. Divide the dough into 4 pieces. Pat each piece into a 4 3/4 circle. So let's see our friendly guide here. Here's 5 inches, so it's got to be just slightly less than that. Let's flour our surface a little more. The dough is sticky. We're going to get this as best we can. Should be 3/4 of an inch thick. See, so we can see our guide there. That's about right. 3/4 of an inch is just shy of that inch there. Pardon the very messy hands. And that looks good. So I'm going to take this and move it to my baking sheet. And let's do the others. The dough is very wet, so feel free to get your hands doused in flour. Don't worry about a little extra flour in the scones. They'll turn out just fine. I am going against the recipe where it tells me to have 2 separate baking sheets. They fit on one. They have baking powder in them, and quite a lot. But they have no yeast, so I'm not convinced they're going to expand, but we will prove or deny this theory in just a few minutes after it is baked. If it turns into one giant scone, well, what's so bad about that? If they stay their individual pieces, then you can do what I did too. Do you remember in my strawberry hand pies episode that I mentioned the sparkling sugar that I found at the supermarket? Well, this recipe doesn't call for that, but in my mind, scones always have some sort of thicker, coarser sugar, which is sparkling sugar, on top. So even though the recipe doesn't say it, I'm gonna put it on top anyway. Because I made the rounds, these will go into the oven for 20 to 25 minutes. If you made the drop style scones, those will stay in for less, I think about 18 minutes. But check on them, they should be a golden brown. I kept them in for closer to 25 minutes and they got big. Ooh, look at that. They're a nice golden brown. I can see the sugar on top. Yum. It's at this moment where we take those big rounds, which did okay on my one baking sheet, but you can see that the baking powder really did help them expand. At this point, I'm going to cut them into the wedges, and then we're going to let them cool and taste them. My favorite part, the tasting. Let's take a look at it first. So you can see that sparkling sugar. Can you see it shimmer in the camera? Well, I can, at least in person. And I can see the pieces of apricot in there on the sides. And the dough looks like it was a perfect bake. It's soft and looks delicious. We ready for the bite? Mmm. These are delicious. These are really, really delicious. I can taste the lightness and brightness of the lemon in it, but it's not overpowering. And the apricots add a little bit of chew and sweetness. I don't taste the buttermilk so much, but I think it's sort of cutting the sugar in the most perfect of ways. Scones are so easy to make. They quickly came together. I'd never made this recipe before, and I was able to make these yummy buttermilk lemon apricot scones from scratch. If I can do this, you can too. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode.